Sandi, thank you very much for talking to us.
It's lovely.
About the new play, Silver Lining. What a lovely title and a kind of beautiful idea. Tell me a little bit about the idea behind the play and where it came from.
Well, I am slightly obsessed with the fact that there are not enough good parts for our wonderful, mature women actresses in this country. And I am a believer that you shouldn't just complain about things, you should get off your bottom and go and do something about it. So I wrote a play which stars 6 women and one, frankly, token man. And 5 of the actresses in it are of a certain age. Our oldest actress is 82. And they are amazing, and watching them work together, it's like a masterclass in how you do it. They've got the timing of an angel. It's fantastic.
Wonderful. So it's opening in Kingston this week, and then kind of going on a big UK
It's going
tour.
a tour around the country. One of the things that I think is really important is that we keep theatre live, same as we need to keep music live. And there's something very special about that experience of going into a room, maybe getting a bit dressed up, having a drink, and being out with a gang to all sit and laugh and clap and cry all at the same time. So there's some amazing theatres around the country, and I've played most of them, so I'm thrilled that my play is going, because I'm not in it. It's going off without me.
What was it like writing the play? I mean, you've written so many books over the years, and to write this play and, as you say, kind of create these parts for older women. It's not, these voices aren't this perspective isn't one that we always see on stage.
No, my wife is a therapist, and she says there's a very fine line between mental health issues and being a writer, because I hear voices and then I turn them into dialogue. She quite often comes into my study and I'm going, I'm talking to myself.
So you're a mumbler when you write.
I'm a mumbler. But I wanted them to be as realistic as possible. So all of the characters are either based on composites of people that we've met or people that I have read about, because I wanted them to have as full a three-dimensional life as is possible. Because too often, if you look through the window of an old people's home and you see a lot of old ladies, nearly always women more than men, sitting in the lounge, we might just think, oh, that's just a bunch of old people, and we don't look at them as individuals who had amazing lives, maybe great sexual appetites, maybe wonderful businesses. We just see a kind of blanket thing of them being old people.
So, Sandi, you started out in theatre, right, as follow spot operator, I read. What was it?
Not far from where we are. So I was at school, and we were taken, for the one and only time I was at boarding school, we were taken to see a musical. And we went to see Jesus Christ Superstar, and I think the headmistress had no idea what it was, because she was horrified by what we had seen as young girls.
It was quite controversial.
It was
at the time,
very
wasn't
controversial
it? Yeah.
time, and there was simulated sex and all kinds of terrible things in it. And in the back of the brochure, which I had purchased, there was the name of the man who then owned the theatre, Sir Emil Littler. And I wrote to him when I was going to have a year between school and university, and said, please, can I come and work for you? And he gave me a job in the electrics department. But I was the shortest person they'd ever had trying to operate a follow spot. So I had to stand on an old apple box in order to work the lights. And it was at the Palace Theatre. It was literally several hundred yards from where we are sitting right now. And the extraordinary story, which life is sometimes very strange. So I have, about 5 years ago, I was researching my great-grandfather, who was a man called Field Trickett, and he was an inventor. And I discovered he was the man responsible for putting electric light into the London's West End, and he put the very lights into the Palace Theatre, where I became a follow spot operator.
What?
Do you not think that's the most extraordinary thing?
That's amazing.
And I love that building. It's the only theatre in London, possibly one of the only theatres in the world, that's a complete city block. It's got streets all the way around it. It's beautiful. And my job, apart from operating the follow spot, was to go in at night before the audience, before all the crew, and turn all the lights on. You think somebody's got to do it, right? You can't leave the lights on all day in the theatre when nobody's in there. So I used to have the building to myself. For about an hour and a half every single day when I would go around. And it's got little towers, the theatre, and in one of the towers you can hear a lady singing scales, and we don't know why, but you hear it every night. You hear somebody singing the scales.
Really?
Yeah.
So I bet there are stories about her.
Yeah.
The ghosts.
The ghosts of the theatre.
Oh my goodness! So obviously you were destined to have a career in this world. With that introduction.
I didn't know it at the time, but I get a thrill every time I walk through a stage door. It's something, I don't know, is never repeated for me. I just love it. It's wonderful.
So very special to be back there with your play.
Yeah.
And tell me about Footlights as well, because I know that, when you kind of broke through there, that you had an all-female show, and that caused quite a stir as well, another kind of stage.
Well, it had never been done before, and myself and a woman called Emma Thompson, I don't know what happened to her, but she and I got fed up with saying, the doctor will see you now. which was pretty much the only line
That was the gig going,
we used to
right?
get in sketches. So we decided to do our own show, and the boys said it would never work. And we put it together, and it sold more tickets than any Footlights show had ever done, and was a huge hit and success. And then I went back a couple of years ago to talk to the women in Footlights, who's still an ongoing organisation, and I said, come on guys, and nothing had changed. That's the really sad thing, is nobody had ever done it again, an all-female show, and the women were still saying, and the doctor will see you now.
Really? So nobody had ever... So they hadn't kind of run with that?
It was a one-off.
Oh, man.
And you can't bear it, because you think, oh, everything will have changed. All those young, feisty people, come on, get yourselves going.
I mean, this is a kind of case in point with what you're trying to do, this breaking of the glass ceiling. I suppose, in your experience, does it take more than just one crack to kind of get through?
It's not done. The thing is, I can't quite believe that I'm still talking about it. I've been trying to consciousness raise all of my life. Since I was able to speak, since I was about 4, I thought, wait a second, that's not fair. I remember my father coming home. He came home with a Saturn V rocket for my brother to build, and I got a little piece of jewellery. And I nearly went insane. I was so angry, and I must have been 5 or 6 years old when Dad came home with this. And I thought, but I want to build a rocket. I don't want a bit of... What can I do with that? You can't play with it, you can't make it, you can't do anything, you can't learn anything from it. So that rage that I felt that day has stayed with me always. But I would really have preferred it if the job was done and sorted and it wasn't still a fight. That is a bit boring.
How do we... I mean, to what extent are the choices that you make in your career influenced by the changes that you want to see in the world, as in the part of the world that you're engaged with?
Well, hugely. I mean, first of all, I try and do a good job at everything that I'm doing, because you always feel, if you're a woman presenting a show, you're not just yourself presenting a show, you represent all womanhood, because if you fail...
No pressure.
So if you fail, they go, oh... So the number of people I've said, oh, we've had a woman present a chat show. And that's it. If we're done, we have hundreds of men presenting them. But it's not that difficult.
To varying degrees of success.
Exactly. Yeah. But honestly, it's not that difficult. You get told who's coming on beforehand, and you write the questions out. It's not that tricky. I think I do think about it. I do think about hopefully giving a good role model. Although some people find strong, opinionated women hard to swallow. I think they find it a bit difficult. But like with the play, every single penny that I would have got, all the royalties, will go directly to the Women's Equality Party to continue the fight for equality in this country.
I mean, it's been a few years now since you founded the Women's Equality Party. How is it going? And I wonder how different it is running that than your expectation.
Yeah, the startup thing is very exciting. And then, what are we? We're coming up 2 years in. It's running a business, and it's expensive. I had no idea. There's all sorts of software that you need, for example, to be able to analyse the seats. You can't stand candidates in every single seat, and you need to be able to analyse the demographics and where you're most likely to win. And then you need to be in constant communication with your membership, and then you need for members of staff to go out and meet with the membership. I had no idea how expensive or complicated it is. But what's so heartening is when you do go and visit the branches, and we have... Well, I'm trying to think, there are more than 70 branches around the country now. When you do go and visit them, and you meet the activists, and you meet the people who are the very lifeblood of the party, and that includes lots of fabulous men, then you think, it's okay, this one's doing. I need to keep doing this. This is great. You
addressed the crowds in Trafalgar Square at the demonstrations after President Trump's inauguration. What was that like?
That was one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life. So I have spoken in Trafalgar Square a few times before. Spoke at, for example, gay pride events and so on. I have never seen the square full to bursting. It was not possible to see a single scrap of pavement anywhere. And I could also hear all the people down Whitehall behind me and in every artery. And at one point I said to the crowd, they can hear us in Parliament from here, so let's make a noise and make sure that they do. And the noise rolled over me. It was like a wave. It was the most astonishing and powerful noise I've ever heard in my life. And then you feel a tremendous sense of responsibility. You feel a tremendous sense of responsibility to make sure you're not just saying random things to the crowd. You're saying things that will make people feel better, because I think a lot of people are frightened at the moment, and that will activate people. I think everybody has an activation button, and we'll activate them to do something. And it doesn't have to be on a global stage. It doesn't even have to be on a national stage. It could be in your street. It could be in your family. It could be making sure that everybody is treated fairly in some smaller manner. But we can all do something, every single one of us.
You've got to be the only founder of a political party who's also written a book on good manners, Sandi.
Do you not think they all should read it?
Obviously, they should all read it, yeah. Well, this is the thing. I mean, I wanted to ask you about what you think about the kind of the language of public debate, the tone of public debate, and
it's very bad manners.
How we can do better.
It's very bad manners. It's uncivil. And I think bringing civility back is a really old-fashioned idea, which is, so there's a sort of a binary thing now that if I don't like what you say, I don't just dislike it, I hate it. There's a lot of really unpleasant language. So if I don't care for what my opponent has done, I'm to lock her up. It's shocking, actually, that we've reached that stage. And I think a lot of journalism is not good. My dad was a wonderful journalist, a very famous Danish journalist, and he had a sign above his desk that said, "No journalist should write that which he cannot say as a gentleman." And meaning you should be honourable and you should be truthful and you should seek the facts before you give your opinion about things. And actually we could do well to remember some of those basic things. So it isn't actually old-fashioned to think about good manners. They're just the bit that make other people feel comfortable. The good manners thing to do in any situation is what's going to make the maximum number of people feel comfortable. That's all. And don't impugn people. Don't say the judiciary is rubbish or the media are rubbish. I think we're in a horrible period of unkindness, and I think we have to temper that as best we can with how we treat each other.
And how do you kind of do that in practice, especially in politics? Because, you know, if you are, as you say, being civil and being polite, but other people aren't, it can be quite difficult not to join in.
Kill them with kindness. Kill them with kindness and jokes. I think you can't go far wrong with jokes.
Well, that's true.
They don't like it if you take the mickey. Isn't it interesting how riled Donald Trump has been by jokes on Saturday Night Live and other late night shows? He's been really riled by it. More riled than the opposition. More riled than any Democratic senator making a speech. He's been irritated by Melissa McCarthy brilliantly playing his press secretary Sean Spicer or Alec Baldwin playing him in Saturday Night Live. So I think humour is a fantastic weapon.
And the power of satire.
Yeah, thank goodness. Thank goodness it's here and it's alive.
A noble tradition.
It's a fantastic thing.
Sandi, you mentioned your dad, and I know that you were, raised in an environment where you were expected to kind of contribute and have something to say. And has that always been the case? Have you always been kind of socially conscious and engaged with what's going on in the world?
My father had one overriding word in his life, and it was passion. He believed that you should be passionate. You should be passionate about the people that you live with, passionate about your family, passionate about food. He would have been passionate about this glass of water, and you should be a passionate member of society and feel things strongly. And if you are articulate and able to string a sentence together, use it for some good. You use it to try and change things and to persuade people maybe there's a better way of doing things. So probably it sounds a bit Pollyanna-ish, but maybe I continue to be an optimist and positive, but I'd rather that than sink into a terrible despair thinking the world's going to hell in a handcart. There are things I read that they have just basically decriminalised domestic violence in Russia. And I could just sob, but I'm not going to. I'm going to see if I can't keep talking about it and can't keep trying to get the word out there. I believe eventually a global movement, an international movement of solidarity of women across the world, that may be the answer what is needed.
And in terms of your own activism and alongside a very busy professional life, how do you kind of maintain your own equilibrium and find time for yourself and all of the things that you're interested in? I mean, you know.
My family are amazing. And they always keep my feet on the ground. So I was sitting at a wonderful table where we can seat 14. The entire family was sitting at Sunday lunch, and I was sitting at the head of the table. I was telling what I thought was a rather fine story. And my daughter Megan tapped me on the hand. She said, "Mum, nobody's listening." I said, "People pay money for this, So I think, you've got family. There's nothing more levelling, is there, than having your own kids tell you to shush.
So that just keeps the ego in check.
Yeah.
What about kind of taking time for yourself? I mean, as you say, it's a really busy time for you in all sorts of different ways.
Yeah, that doesn't happen so much, and I keep promising. them all that that's going to happen very soon. The problem is that there's so much I enjoy. I love doing QI. I love being in the office working out the facts that we're going to use. I've loved being in rehearsal for the play. I like sitting in my office and writing. I like what I do, as I'm sure you do, because you bring such energy to what you do. So it must be because you like doing it. So one of the solutions has been to put my son in my play, because at least I got to hang out with him every day.
Spend some time, done. You're on, you do that.
Yeah, we had a few quality days together because he was in my play.
I read that your other half has in sort of instigated a rule where you're not allowed to have an idea until she's had a cup of tea in the morning.
Yeah, she's got to have a cup of tea. And I'm learning this new, because she's from Lancashire, right? She gets very irritated about how I make tea. And in 10 years, it's taken me to learn to put the milk in second.
Milk in second?
I know.
Right, okay.
Oh, totally, because it's not dark enough. She likes it with the spoon almost standing up in it. So I make the tea in the morning, and I tell the dog my new idea. And then I'm allowed to tell her.
So run it past the dog first.
Just check it out with the dog. And the dog usually goes, so.
What's next for you? I mean, so many different plates spinning and projects on the go. You mentioned QI.
Yeah, new series of QI, which we're about to start recording. I've got another 40 episodes of a quiz show I do for Channel 4 called 15 to 1, which I'm about to record. And then I've got a new novel coming out in September.
Okay, what can you tell us about that?
Book for next year. It's a sequel. I write kids' books related to history. And I wanted to read about the journey from the Irish famine in the 1840s all the way to the west coast of America. I couldn't find this book that I wanted to read, so I wrote it because it's easier. So the first book has already been published, and that's an Irish family going from Ireland to New York. And the sequel is them traveling the covered wagon bit from New York to Oregon. It's finished, but it's published in September.
You have such a kind of voracious imagination. Is there anything that you don't find interesting, I wonder?
Sport. I just can't get it. I get somebody's won, but I don't care. I get somebody's fast. I don't really care. Or tie. Well done. No. I always think, well done. Yay. So 2 teams stand there and kick a football for hours. The bit I like is the 5 minutes at the end when they just kick goals. And I think we could just have that and watch The Sound of Music.
The shootout is you're into.
That's fine.
What about London 2012? I mean, did that not...
I loved it because I didn't watch any, but the traffic in London was really light. So that was good. Everybody's watching the sport. I was driving my car. I'm
quite encouraged by the idea that there is something that you're not interested in, or that you just don't get, because...
No, I like boxing, weirdly.
But I mean, that's a sport.
Doing it, not watching it.
Oh, doing it.
Yeah, it's
How
very
long
cool.
have you been doing that?
A couple of years now. And I love it. I really like that. I mean, nobody's ever going to watch me doing it, but it's a fantastic fitness for...
Do you actually go to a gym with a
I did for a while, and
but...
now I just beat my wife, which is a terrible thing to say, but she has gloves on, it's fine.
She's got the
It's totally fine, it's totally fine.
It's a totally...
It's not like a Russian thing, it's totally fine.
Sandi, I have to ask you about the fact that at the moment it seems like British culture is obsessed with Danish culture.
Yeah.
And you know, that there's a lot of kind of conversation between the two. Everybody that I know this winter was hugging. What do you make of it, you know, having been kind of brought up and obviously living with plenty of both?
I can't imagine not having it, and it's really interesting to me that it's a concept, it's a word that doesn't really translate. So hygge, I might say to you, you know, hopefully we'll be friends, and I'll say to you, come over and we'll hygge. And it means sitting in candlelight in the cosy warm and maybe having a few drinks and a laugh. But it doesn't really fully translate into English. So it's an experience that I've had all of my life, and the Danes are so obsessed with it. Even if you went to a motorway service cafe, there would be a candle lit on the table. I'm appalled you haven't got a candle lit on this table. It's disgraceful. And you'd feel warm and cozy. And what I think we could do with is some more of that work-life balance that the Danes seem to be able to do, and I don't. They have a 35-hour working week, and the country hasn't ground to a halt. It seems to be fine, and we should all spend more time with our friends. Not doing anything really, just hugging. And I'm interested, the world seems a slightly scary place now. We talk about global warming and we talk about terrorism and so on. It doesn't surprise me that people want to go back to an old-fashioned thing of sitting in the cosy warm with the door closed.
It seems like the backswing to all of this, to the kind of digital life that so many of us are leading, which is quite abstract, and you know, this is the kind of cosy handmade side of things.
Yeah, it's what's called the grandmother crafts. It's what Iceland went back to after the ash and cash crisis. They went back to doing the sort of things their grandmothers had done, making jam and curing meat, what of, I have no idea, and knitting and all that kind of thing. That is certainly how I relax. I don't watch television just by itself. I embroider, or I have a loom. I do weaving, or I knit presents for friends. So those things, those methodical craft making things, they're very good for you. They're very calming.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I know that in Denmark there is quite a kind of long-standing tradition of people continuing their education in adulthood as well. Is that right?
Yes,
Or is that-
absolutely. And
yeah.
I think that, that is something that we should encourage. And I would love to see more people as well doing art. I think art is really good. One of the ways in which the United States got out of the Great Depression was the Federal Art Project. And the government employed 5,000 artists to give art lessons across the United States after the Depression. And maybe
It's
we
hard
need
to imagine anybody doing that now.
Wouldn't it be wonderful? Wouldn't it be wonderful? If I have a dream, an ambition, apart from the health and good well-being of my kids, it's I'd like to do my PhD. I would love to go back to university and just sit down with a pile of books.
What would your subject be?
Quietly. I think probably something in the creative arts, something to do with creative writing. I haven't really decided, but just to have that time to read and study and maybe even formulate a new thought, that would be amazing.
And obviously, you know, being on tour with Silver Lining and the play being out there, it's such a beautiful title and kind of funny and lovely in all sorts of different ways. But also, it is the distillation of optimism.
Yeah.
I mean, you obviously are an optimist.
Yes, absolutely. I can't be anything else. I travel around this country, as I'm sure you do, and members of the public come up because I've been in their sitting rooms and they hug me. And my general view is that this country and its people is a far nicer, kinder population than the press would ever have us believe. And I find that really heartening.
Long may it continue.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sandi.
You're so welcome.